So we've got a good lecture for you today. It's once again the Tuesday night lecture. It's Learn from the Legends. I mean, we have Alexander Ilyin Zhenevsky. Let me pull up a little bit about Ilyin Zhenevsky. So he's a very got a really awesome story, actually. So so the points that stick out to me were that Ilyin Zhenevsky promoted chess as an educational vehicle for developing tactical and strategical comprehension during military training, and within the Soviet Union, he was the main person responsible for spreading of the idea that chess as a way to teach the basics of scientific and rational thought. Okay, so part of chess being spread to so many people in the Soviet Union had a lot to do with Alexander Ilyin Zhenevsky. So I think that that's a really maybe even more so than than his own chess play was being a sort of diplomat for chess. He has a variation of the Dutch defense named after him. Also, what most people know as the classical Dutch is really for many years the Ilyin Zhenevsky variation, which is that the queen sort of goes to the king's side in the classical Dutch. So we're going to talk about that when we see the game of his. And he died in a very, well, I wouldn't say, I don't know how to say it, like unusual way, but historic way. So he actually died in a Nazi airstrike at Lake Ladoga on a ship, in 1941. So sort of crazy, way to die. You don't really hear much. You don't really hear much about that, but people in chess are dying that way. But anyway, so I had heard of Alexander Ilyin Zhenevsky before. So here's the thing. I have heard of him before, but when I remembered seeing his name, it was associated with the variation of the Dutch, the classical Dutch, called the Ilyin Zhenevsky variation. Okay, but people call it the classical Dutch. But he, in modern chess openings, I remember seeing it as the Ilyin Zhenevsky variation. So that's how I learned about him as a player. But I never really dug too deep into his own game. So we're gonna see a few games of his today. See, he has some brutal victories. I think we'll let you make up your mind about what style of player you think Alexander Ilyin Zhenevsky was. But I would just say that while he was a principled player, I would say sometimes he got himself into hot water being too principled. Particularly if he was chasing material. I don't think he believed in all-out onslaughts by his opponent, so somehow he would allow his opponents to go all out for the attack and defend really well. In fact, that's how he beat Capablanca in a game, which I'm not going to show. He did not believe in the direct attack, if he didn't feel like he did anything wrong. But sometimes that got him into hot water. So we're going to see him. I would say he's more of a strategic player, but when you see these games, you're going to be like, well, what do you mean strategic player? He's just smashing people with tactics. But remember, chess strategy and chess tactics go hand in hand. So tactics arise when you have outplayed your opponent in a strategic way, when you have posted your pieces in better situations, when you have gotten your king into safety faster, when you control more of the center of the board. So remember, tactics and strategy do not go hand in hand. A lot of people, when they tell you to improve at chess, they say, do your chess tactics. Yes, you need tactical vision to win chess games. But how you produce tactics in your own game, a lot of that has everything to do with how you position yourself in the game. So strategy and tactics go hand in hand. I don't know what the percentage is. How much of chess is tactics, how much of chess is strategy, I don't know. Okay, what I know is that they go hand in hand. If you have a good position, you can expect to find tactics. If you have a trash position, you can expect tactics to get played on you. Okay, so that's just the way it goes. All right, let's look at the first game against Romanovsky. Romanovsky was a good player of this time. I'm not sure if we'll talk about him in a lecture, but he's got a few gems as well. All right, so e4, c6, the Caro-Kann defense. d4, d5, knight to c3. So these days, I mean, in this position, most players advance. But for many, 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 many years, knight c3 or knight to d2, developing and guarding the pawn, similar to the French defense, was considered the best way to play against the Caro-Kann, because you're bringing out pieces and you still haven't allowed black an easy way to get their bishop into the game. Okay. Black captures as to not allow white to completely take over the center. Knight takes. And now knight to d7, sometimes known as the Smyslov variation, sometimes known as the Karpov variation. So, okay. Well, knight to d7, here's the basic point. The basic point is we want to challenge this knight in the center, but in the event of a capture, we want this knight to be able to capture back. We do not want to have to capture with our pawn. These days, people do play this move and allow the crippling of their pawn structure one way or another, but it's not to everyone's taste. So, knight to d7, knight f3. I faced this many times in my life. I always played bishop to d3 here. But knight f3 and this possible variation is a solid one for white. So, bishop to c4, I like that move. Now tell me this, chat. Tell me this. So, in this particular situation, black wants to get the light squared bishop out. However, this doesn't really get it out. This allows a terrible pawn structure damage. This is one possible way, and this is another. What is wrong with this move? Can somebody tell me? What is wrong with the move bishop to g4, which looks like such an innocent move, a beautiful developing move, pinning the knight on f3 and causing hardship? Very good. Bishop takes f7 check. You lure the king out, and then you play knight e5 check with the fork and a discovery on the bishop on g4. So even though this line for white seems pretty tame, it's not that easy for black to complete development. Black should play bishop to f5. In the game, Romanovsky played g6. And g6 is designed to later get this bishop out, but first develop the king side. I like here what Ilyin Zhenevsky played. He played the move knight to g5, immediately putting the pressure on the black position, going after the f-pawn and saying, well, if I get you to play the move e6, right, blocking my attack, then the moves e6 and g6 in conjunction with each other weaken the dark squares, but also blocks in this bishop. So Romanovsky was like, well, I would like to not have to play the move e6, so I'll play knight to d5. But you can see how white's pieces are starting to dance against the f-pawn. This knight has moved a few times. So white brings another piece into the attack and tries to swiftly attack while the black king is in the center, and black doesn't have much development. So white plays queen f3 with a direct attack on f7. Well, how do you deal with this? Right? You can't play knight back because then you allow bishop takes f7. Your knight's not blocking anymore. So the only real thing that you can do here is something like f6. It's too late to try to play the move bishop to f5 because after the move g4, I'm going to smack that bishop right out of the f-file. So, okay. So, in the game, f6 was played. And well, there's a lot of pressure on black's position. Bauer Salat, thank you so much for a subscription. Welcome, Nick. Welcome, Kali. Welcome, Dinekis. Welcome, everyone. So, f6 is a very weakening move, and even though it gains a tempo on the knight and forces the knight to, forces white to react to this, it weakens black's position heavily because here's the thing. When you play f6, this diagonal is open forever. Right? This diagonal is open forever. And after the move knight to e4, there are some basic threats coming. I mean, he moves the knight away. Now, here is where fundamentally Romanovsky plays a bad move, or a bad sequence of moves. And I would say the older the games, the more principled, let's say, in a way, the players were. Here's what Romanovsky was thinking. He's like, wait a minute. I can play my knight back to b6, and I can attack your bishop, and I can also threaten your pawn. So if I play the move knight to b6, I can attack your bishop and have a discovery on your pawn. But I feel like that's sort of a step in the wrong direction. Shouldn't black be going bishop to g7 and castle and get the king out of the middle? Right? If I'm playing black here and I'm like, I just played f6, taking away good squares from my pieces. I've pried open this diagonal. If I move this knight off of d5, this bishop is going to reign free here. Right? So I'm thinking to myself, I cannot believe Romanovsky played the move knight to b6, attacking this bishop with intention to take this pawn. Right? So Ilya Zhenevsky was like, you go ahead. You really want that pawn? Now that you've allowed my bishop to stop you from castling and it's ripping through your position, go ahead and take it. So Romanovsky was like, okay, I don't mind if I do. Thank you so much. I will grab that little sweet thing right there and I'll say, what do you got? I'll show you some nice, cute little variations here. So bishop to e3 was played, and in the game queen e5 was played. But I was looking at another greedy move, right? I was like, what if black took another pawn here? Because in the game, what happened after queen e5 was white castled and got the rook to the d file and protected the king. So out of curiosity, I was like, okay, let's have a look at queen takes b2, since that attacks the rook and prevents castling to the queen side. So rook to d1, and now there's a very sneaky and dirty threat in the position, which is bishop to d4. And you're like, well, that doesn't do anything, right? So I'm going to play bishop to f5. Something like that. Okay. And now, if you move your queen, the only place to move your queen is a3. And then what very nasty move can white play here, which picks up the queen? It's not even bishop takes f7 anymore. It's just bishop f7. You just plop that bishop into f7 for a check, and then you grab the queen over on a3. Right? There's a trick like this in the Najdorf poison pawn as well. That's why your pieces don't belong looming everywhere with no development and a weak king. So that was one variation. Another variation I thought was, maybe the queen goes away right now before this bishop can move for the discovery. But in a position like this, white is just too active for black to justify, what he did in the opening, which was move the queen 800 times to grab two pawns. But look at this. Guns blazing here. Knight takes f7 knight takes f6 is being threatened. There's all sorts of tricks in this position. Knight d6 is even a threat. It's hard to move. You move this pawn, f6 hangs for free. So that would not have worked out well. Neither did queen to e5. But okay, white in this case got to castle to the queen side, which guards the pawn on b2 and activates the pieces. So if we take a look at this position, right, we're like, was it worth the pawn? You always have to ask yourself. And recently I've been playing on stream. I don't know if some of you have caught it, but I've been playing some hand and brain with Daniel Zhenevsky, which is where I say, Daniel, move a bishop, and then he has to decide which bishop to move and where to move it. And so it's like a team game. Okay. So, there's difference in thought, but I am not a grabber of pawns, especially if that means that accelerates my opponent's development. I am not a huge fan of grabbing pawns because I'm like, well, wait a minute. You want me to grab that one little pawn at the expense of the rest of my forces, and what you're saying is that pawn's going to help you win 50 moves from now? Let's think about that. Okay? Let's think about that. Maybe if I'm a computer, I grab the pawn and say, what you got? This is the danger behind only looking at computer evaluation in chess. You're like, the computer takes it, and then you're like, I'm a genius, equal, right? And then every move from the moment you take that pawn to the moment you get checkmated, every move is a minefield of tactics against you because your pieces are in total disarray. So I'm not a huge fan of grabbing pawns. In this case, it's even more obvious that black should not have grabbed the pawn, because where in the world is black gonna castle? How is black gonna complete development? Right? Welcome. Thank you, Grant, for the subscription to the channel. We're working our way back up to 200. We're not there yet. We only have 185. Our ultimate goal in the near future is 300, but we got to get back to 200. Okay, so knight to d5, the knight comes back again. And the purpose of knight to d5 was to block this diagonal and get the knight back into the game. So what has happened? Black is up a pawn, but black is suffering like crazy because his king is stuck in the center, he has no development, and castling is not in sight. Here, white wins their pawn back with the following chess tactic, the sequence of moves. What did white play here to win their pawn back? Oh, wait a minute now. What did I just see over here? Awesome. So Innovative Panda, the reason that you get the red carpet, the reason that you get the VIP treatment all the time is because you are such a great contributor to this channel. So Innovative Panda just gifted 15 subs to the community. So if you got one of those subs, and you can see it in the chat whether you've gotten one of those subs, really should be giving Innovative Panda all your love there. So thank you so much, and really appreciate that one. Okay, only Gambito. That is correct. Okay, very good, everyone. So bishop takes d5, pawn takes d5, and rook takes d5. Awesome. So a mini combination of moves there, which wins the pawn back. If the queen takes, then the queens are aligned, so this knight takes f6, check, and discovery against the queen. Yeah, so, like pawn takes knight, and then queen takes queen, right? So black is sort of dead in the water here, in this position. So rook takes d5. I mean, black is already sort of dead because black is now not up a pawn anymore. The development of the white pieces has at least gotten back the pawn and some, because here the poor king is still in the middle, and white has the tempo because white's attacking the queen. Of course, the queen can't take the rook because of the discovery. And so not only is white now equal on material, but white has the development, white has the king's safety, white has the initiative, white's calling the shots. right? So bishop to g4, I thought this was a very good move given the circumstances. And now what do you think white played here, chat? And once again, thanks to Innovative Panda. If you got a sub from Innovative Panda, at least give him a thank you and a shout out for supporting the channel. And it'll spare you some of the commercials. If you have to watch commercials, you won't have to watch them anymore. So greatly appreciated. So what did white play here after the move bishop to g4? So first of all, let's talk about why bishop to g4 was played. So bishop to g4, the idea is if you take, now I can take this rook because there's no discovered attack on the queen anymore. So that's the idea of jettisoning the bishop here on g4. But Ilya Zhenevsky had a nasty move in store for Mr. Peter Romanovsky. What did he play? I already see some people in the chat with it. So again, if queen takes bishop, queen takes rook. That's the idea, and there's no more discovery on the queen. What did Ilya Zhenevsky, the player playing the white pieces, the man of the hour, what did he play here? Nedmac, I'm glad you said that, because sometimes just rearranging your move order makes it even stronger. So, Cal, same thing for you. If you rearrange your move order, you're right, but if you do it in the alternative move order, if you reverse your moves, right, then it's even stronger. Because your second move would be check as well, if you smell what I'm stepping in. Knight takes f6 check. So, if the pawn takes, now you can take the queen with check. So they don't get your queen. So that's number one. Knight takes f6. Of course, you could take with the queen, right? But after queen takes, right, then it's queen takes g4, which has happened in the game. Now, let's talk about this a little bit. Let's compare the two lines, because the only other answer that I saw was rook takes queen first, bishop takes f3, and knight takes f6, which is also looking good. But let's evaluate this position, because this knight is hanging and this bishop is hanging, right? Well, number one, white has the better game here, because white's forces are ready to get into the game. However, would you rather have a pawn-up position like this, where the queens are off the board, or would you rather have a pawn-up position like this one, where the queens are on the board? And I think that all that's relative to the position itself, but in this one, if you're playing white, would you rather have queens on or queens off? Okay, so McDonald says queens on, Dineki says on, Psy Kangaroo says on, Charlotte Knight says queens off, off says Arnav, Racer says on, Correct Goalie says on, Patil says on, off, on, Yeah, so I'd want the queens on. O-N, on. Okay, if I'm playing white, I want the queens on. Okay, and the reason why I want the queens on is because I have a better king than they do. They don't have a king. I have a king, they don't have a king. I have a king, their king is trash. Okay, and it's worse for them if your queen is on the board, because it's more artillery, right? It's more ways for you to take advantage of their exposed king. So that's the deciding factor when you're trying to decide which pieces to keep on in a position like this. So there's an old saying in chess, which I think is, I don't want to offend people and their coaches and the people who've taught them this, but there's an old saying in chess that is, when you're up material, trade, which is really a trash saying. If that's a saying that needs to have like two pages of appendices attached to it, so that way there's a full explanation of that rule, because it's not a good rule. The trading, there's only one rule I can think of in regard to trading, right? That pretty much fits the bill every time, which is, when you're trading, right, you trade if you're getting attacked. You trade off the attackers, right? But if you're attacking, trading is not usually what you want to do. And being up a material is not the factor in this position right here. You're up one pawn, right? Big whoop, right? White is up a one pawn. The biggest thing that of importance here is black's king. Black has no king. No shelter, no development, no king. All of those are better taken advantage of with white having more pieces on the board, right? So forget about the trade when you're up thing. Like, don't have that in your mental algorithm, okay? Just think of it as, in chess, everything is different, and it's more about trading off important pieces versus less important pieces. Not like just arbitrarily, blindly trading just because you're up a measly little pawn. So I like this way better than this way, because here it's not overly clear to me how big the attack is going to be here for white and how much the initiative and the extra pawn mean here as compared to what happened in the game. This way, where white keeps the queen, white keeps the extra pawn, pawn structure remains intact, and white keeps the attacking possibilities open. So just keep that in mind, because these lectures are a little bit entertainment, a little bit enlightening, right? It's supposed to be a learning thing too. So that is a rule that is regularly said. Trade when you're down, or trade when you're up, and I really don't allow it. I really don't like the rule, and I never really teach it to my students. I never did. Chess is not something you can play based upon rules. Everything is different, okay? Everything is different. The most important thing is the king. No matter what position, the king is the most important. That's how you end the game. So queen c6. Okay, the queen moves, pressuring the rook, but only asking for white to get this rook out of the corner and double up. Bishop to g7. And now I like what white did here. So black was thinking, maybe if I'm lucky, Zhenevsky will let me castle to the king side. Like maybe? No. Despite white being up a pawn, white still has to be persistent here and try to prevent black from coordinating. Try to prevent black from coordinating his forces. Black would like to play castles, get the rook into the game. Black would remain a pawn down, but black would have better chances than here with his king in the center. So what did white play to distract black from castling? Okay, Patil's got an answer over there. Dinekis has got an answer. JBC has got an answer. All of them are answers. They all stop or deter black from castling. So very good so far. Queen f3 I see. Rook d6 by DJ Punk. Rook c5. Rook d7. Okay, queen f3. Rook c5. Bishop c5. Okay. So several different answers in the chat. That's good. That means people are thinking in different ways. So rook c5 was played. So rook c5 is a monster move. I don't see how you deal with it, because the queen wants to come to d7, and the rook on c5 is protected by the bishop. And the rook, of course, is attacking the queen. And I just don't see how you can stop queen to d7, which would, in essence, mean you're not castling. And you can castle here if you want. Not give me that queen, though. Right? So, castle if you want, but it's going to cost you big time. So, white didn't do that, or black didn't do that. Black played queen a6. By the way, queen b6 fails to what move? So the idea is to counterattack. But remember, you don't get to play tactics when your position blows. So white with the knockout here. What does white play? That's right. That's exactly right. Rook to c8 check and a discovery on the queen. Yep. Awesome. Awesome. And honestly, it's not even hard because this is even protected, right? So you don't even have to worry about it. You're not even sacrificing anything. You're just gonna be up a bunch of material. So no counterattack possible. So queen a6. Of course, the whole point of making the rook move was queen to d7 check. Now you know black's not castling. So black played king f7. And okay, so Juan asks, what about queen f6? But that one has also an easy answer. So queen f6 aligning the queen bishop battery, but you can stifle that with one move. That's all you need is just one move here, and you just put it right in their face. Yep, Zhenevsky's got it. Bishop to d4. You gain your tempo back and you skewer them. Yeah, because you got the skewer going on here. And you still have all of the attacking possibilities. Like, for example, queen f7, that stops the king from escaping. So now you have the move rook to c8 check. And then queen takes checkmate, right? So guarding this bishop is actually going to be quite difficult to do in this position. So, okay, so queen a6 was played by Romanovsky. Queen d7, white played, because the thing about it is you don't want to allow black to castle, and this is a sure way that he's not going to castle. Now, black has connected the rooks, but black's king is quite vulnerable. So what could you do here if you wanted to continue to harass the black king? What could you do? I would say that several moves are acceptable here. So like rook to c7, lining up the attack on the e-pawn makes a lot of sense to me. Queen to d5 check, trying to induce him to play e6 so that way we can get the rook down to the 7th rank. Makes a lot of sense. So queen to d5 check was played. The only move keeping black in the game here is the offering of the queen trade, because if you go e6 here, then like this is terrible. This is so bad. Yeah. The rooks will be disconnected once again, and the rook infiltrates on the 7th rank, and it's all she wrote there. You guys know that story. So queen d5 check, queen to e6, and rook c7. So basically, in this position, the queen trade has been offered. However, if you take it, we have these roving rooks on the 7th rank. We're already up a pawn. We did not damage our pawn structure, and all of our pieces are going to be in the game, where there's no rook over here hiding and double pawns. So this is a much better version of the possible one before. And now this was the last straw. This was the last straw. Bishop to e5. All right. Let's play our tactical approach here. White to play and finish the game. So you're playing white. You've played from a strategic standpoint. You've played a phenomenal game here as white. You could barely have played better. I mean, Zhenevsky could not have played this position much better than what he did. It's 22 moves into the game. You have the knockout blow finally. You're already winning the game, but you have the knockout here. And that's what you need in a chess game, right? You can win a pawn over here and a pawn over there, and you can take over the outpost square, and you can do all these fancy professional things. But at the end of the day, you have to play the knockout, right? And this is the knockout. And if you can't see the knockout, then you make life difficult for yourself. You may win after 60 moves, but remember, the longer you and I play moves in a chess game, the more we open the doors to error, right? So if you got the win, then hit them, right? If you have the win in hand, right, then take it. So what's the move? I see Dineki says rook takes e7, and Andrei Kat says rook takes e7. E7's Ma says queen f3. But queen f3, I don't see how that's a knockout, because queen f3, they can block in several different ways. So I'm not sure how that's the knockout. Bishop h6, okay, but not really a knockout per se. That's more of a calm move. Thank you, Anu, for the subscription. That's 5 months now, so you've been with us since the beginning. Awesome. Queen d7, rook e7. Yes, very good, everyone. Rook captures e7. A brutal move. But this is why this here is the precise reason why people tell you to do your chess tactics. Because you've done everything so right. Right? Like, you won a little pawn, you got the guys not castling anymore, you have your pieces in the game, so you've done everything right. But he's still hanging in there because you just you did the basics. You didn't do anything beyond the basics. And that's where you need the tactical ability. Like right here, rook takes e7, crushing move. So number one, the queen can't take because it's in a pin. Number two, if you don't take that, you lose your queen. So forget about it. You gotta take it. So the line is very narrow. So king takes rook, guarding the queen. Now, bishop to g5 check. Time to analyze again. This check is brutal because if you move the king away, then I just take the queen. So that's easy, right? If you can push the guy's king away from their queen, you win their queen, you win the game. That's certainly a knockout blow. Okay. What about, there are two things that could happen here. King f7, which is what happened in the game, and bishop to f6. Let's do bishop f6 because that wasn't played, and then we'll go back to the game and see how the game ended. So what happens after bishop to f6? How do you win material here? You get it all back and some. Space Coach says takes on b7. I see that is the only option that I even see to keep the attack going. Queen takes b7. This is brutal because we're attacking this rook, and there's no way that for that king to escape. The king's going to have to go to the back rank, and then we're going to snap that rook off. So let's say here, takes, and then, maybe not that, because, we have this option, but maybe like king f7, and then we just come straight back, and the guy's dead in the water. Now we're up 3 pawns, not just one. We're up 3 pawns with the brutal initiative, right? Rook's coming down to the 7th rank. The king's getting hit all over the place. Black's pieces are only passive. Please don't get me, right? attempting to guard the king. So, yeah, this isn't going to work out. So, in the game, king f7 was played. But, okay. Queen takes b7 check. We rounding up that pawn. If the king goes to the back rank, he loses. So, I mean, I don't know if this was actually played or not, but in my PGN, bishop to c7 was played. And then after queen takes c7, resign. Because here, even though by distracting the queen away from the attack on the rook, that means that the king can go to the back rank. It doesn't matter because, look, here's the thing. Look at this. So how might the game finish here? How about this? How about this? We play bishop h6. Okay, we play bishop to h6, and we threaten checkmate in one move, which seems pretty brutal. Now, they have to cope with a bunch of different things. Rook to the 7th rank, the immediate checkmate in 1, rook to the 8th rank. If this queen moves off of this diagonal, queen c4 check, or all sorts of... This is just over. There's no way to spin it. All right, so let's say something like this happens. We bring this rook down to the final rank, to the 7th rank, and now this is being threatened. You're not surviving. You're simply not surviving. So Romanovsky resigned after bishop to c7, queen takes c7. He just said, all right, screw this. Like, I'm done. I'm not playing this. I'm not playing this anymore. Now let's summarize this game. Yep, let's summarize the important points. And I'll just say the following thing, and I say this in all of my lesson streams. When you review a game of chess, you're not going to remember it. You're not going to remember the whole game. A month from now, 3 months from now, 10 months from now, 5 years from now, 30 years from now. None of that matters. Here's what matters. You saw a game and you remembered an idea. That's the thing. You saw a game and you're like, I remember Giannotto showing me that game, and this stuck with me on that game. And I don't remember it was Romanovsky or Ilya Zhenevsky or Miss Brenda or Alan Hancock, whoever. It doesn't matter who it was. What matters is you saw the game, you walked away from that game saying, oh, I'm going to do that on somebody, or I am going to, remember to do that, or I'm going to remember not to do that, or whatever, right? So you walk away from a game doing that. Like, for example, there are all these famous games where the grandmasters, like the top players in the world, they know these games like verbatim. Like, it's like boom, boom, yes, that's Kasparov, Karpov, 1979, right? They know it, but they don't know all the moves of the game. They know what they need to know from that game. And so that's what, keep that in mind as you're studying, as you're watching chess videos, as you're reading chess books, as you're watching these lectures. Keep that in mind. Just walk away with something from every game. So I'm going to try to help you do that by summarizing. So in this position, Black made a big mistake right here, which was, instead of developing the king side and getting castled, Black chased after a pawn on d4 while allowing White's pieces to reign free. As a consequence to that, White got their king safe and had all the development, and Black's king's protection was just simply nowhere to be found. So far stretched to be able to protect the Black king here, it takes too long to get castled, and White's already generating threats. Rook h to e1 threatens things along the e file, and so forth. Okay, so again, this is not so important because Black is busted in the position, so not really a learning. These are chess tactics. You're not going to remember these a week from now, a month from now, 3 months from now, 3 years from now. You're not going to remember these tactics. This was an important decision. Some suggested takes, and to play this position. Ilya Zhenevsky decided to play knight takes f6 first. Idea being if the pawn takes, we take the queen with check, so that loses. Queen takes and queen takes, which still wins a pawn, but keeps the queen on the board. So I'm going to give you this piece of advice again, and I'm going to attempt not to exhaust you too much by saying the same thing. When you're attacking, do not trade. I don't give a damn if you're up a knight, a rook, 8 rooks, 5 rooks, 30 rooks. It's bug house, it's crazy house. I don't care what it is. When you're attacking, you don't trade. You don't trade. I don't care what it is. You don't trade. So, I don't care. You're up a pawn, big whoop. You're up a rook, a knight, whatever. So what? What do you want to trade for? You're the one who's got the attack. The king matters. Black has no king here. White has a king. So, you walk away from this game, you're going to walk away with a lot of games. You're going to walk away with a lot of games where when you're on the offensive, there is no reason to trade unless you're dispatching of their protection or something, right? But just like trading your major pieces when you're attacking the king makes no sense. Yeah, so come on. So yeah, trade when you're up only applies in positions where nothing's happening. But you have to know when to break rules or and remember that you cannot play chess on rules alone. So you have to make up your own rules too. Okay. So welcome. Okay, Innovative Panda says, I took Peter's advice and lost all my shares in the stock market. Yeah, well, here's the thing, yeah. You got to be careful when you're rolling the dice, my friend. You got to be careful when you're rolling the dice. Here, you're not rolling the dice. All the information is in front of you. You see this king. There's no king for black. You're already killing him. There's no reason to trade. You got it right there in front of you. When you're up material, you only trade if you're the one who has to diffuse your opponent's initiative. Because quite often, what happens is, like, you win some material, and as a consequence to winning that material, your opponent liberates themselves a little bit, they get some action, and so the logic of trading when you're up material applies more then. When you're up material and you're attacking, and you are the one attacking, you don't trade. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, so it doesn't make sense. How does that make logical sense? It doesn't. So, okay, great. Next game. You're like, my coach told me that I'm supposed to trade when I'm up, and Giannatos doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay, but I'm pretty sure all the top players are in cahoots about that. When you're trading, you do not trade your pieces off when you're on the offensive. I think that's just, straight across the board, anyone, even the top players in the world would agree with that. Because that's not really an advanced thing. It's just sort of logical. So, when you first start playing chess, and I wish, if Coach Grant is there in the chat, could you issue a poll? I'd like to poll our fans today, our followers, our viewers, on what their ratings are. I'd like to get a better idea of where our audience stands today. I think I have a good idea from previous streams, but I'd like to maybe poll, because we got about 140 people watching, so I'd like to poll and see who I'm talking to mostly, but I have an idea. Okay, so we're going to move on for now. Okay, so here we go. E4, E6, D4, D5, French defense by Sergeyev. Okay, so knight to C3, one of the main ways to play the French defense. Bishop to b4, the Winauer variation, the Winauer. Okay, and then bishop to d3. So, I mean, these days, most players play the move e5. I like to dabble with the move knight g to e2. And, yeah, so Tom the Sneck says, I can tell you, one of my friends had me by the gonads with his queen and rook right up in his position, but then he traded it all away and the game ended in a draw. So in other words, he let you off the hook. And that was a result of him trading his pieces. So, okay, so Grant's got the poll out there. I'm going to let you guys take the poll. I appreciate if you guys do, and then we're going to analyze this game. So bishop to d3 was played, which is not a bad move. It doesn't score so bad according to Lichess database. Pawn to c5, and now a very unique thing happens, which I think I was talking to Naroditsky about, or I don't know if I was talking to Naroditsky or if I was talking to like Grant or somebody. Like, we have these discussions about chess at the club sometimes if we're hanging out. Maybe it was Alex or Dominique, I don't know. And we talk about this. We talked about this here, which is the pawn structure that happens in the French defense sometimes. So check this pawn structure out. Okay, I've had this before in the McCutcheon variation of the French, which is a different variation, but those of the experienced players will know what I'm talking about. If you don't know, it's fine. It's a similar position to this, okay? The only difference is there was a pawn here, and there was a white pawn here. And I was having a discussion with the guys, I don't remember who it was, at the chess club, but back before the end times, and about this pawn structure which arises from the French defense. And again, there could be a pawn here and a white pawn here. In this case, they were traded out. They were traded off. Okay, so I said this is always better for white because white has the dark squared bishop. Always. Always better for white because white has the dark squared bishop. I cannot think of a single time where this pawn structure, whether it's, I cannot think of a single time in the French defense where black gives away dark squared bishop to cripple the pawns like this, and even if black gets one of them back, that this isn't better for white than it is for black. And that's an enlightening thing, because if I were you, I would be looking at this and going, what are you talking about, man? Are you crazy? How could this be better for white? The pawns all stacked on top of each other like that, and they look like they're just for pickings later in the game. Like, how is this better for white, right? Well, I can try to explain it like this. It is uncomfortable to play. It's an uncomfortable position to play with white because the pawn structure on the queen side is no good. However, when you have bad pawn structure, you get open lines as a consequence to that. On top of that, it is very important, and this happens very often in the French defense, Winauer and McCutcheon, where the dark squared bishop is traded off for the knight, which leaves white with this dark squared bishop and black empty on the dark squares. And even if black gets one of these pawns back, that only further opens up the dark squares for the white bishop. So it's hard to explain without showing many examples, but these types of positions that arise from the French are always better for white, which is why I stopped playing the McCutcheon as black. I stopped playing the Winauer and I stopped playing the McCutcheon because I was so fed up with these positions. I'm like, if I can't give away my dark squared bishop and get this position and have a good game, then why am I playing the Winauer and McCutcheon? Why? If in the best case scenario, right, that this happens and it's still terrible for black, then I don't want to play the position. So queen a5 was played, knight to e2, and guarding this pawn. Now, I will ask you, what happens if black takes this? This illustrates greatly exactly what I'm talking about. This unopposed dark squared bishop getting into all these dark squares is so powerful for white. You just got to know how to use it. As Kali says, you got to know how to use it. You have assets, but how do you use them? Very good, DJ. Yeah, DJ Punk Let's Party. Yep, and Dinekis. Very awesome. Awesome. A4. Brutal move. The idea is that, you can be impulsive and play the move bishop to e3, right? And try to gain that tempo. But your bishop is much better placed on the a3, f8 diagonal, where you can control this beautiful diagonal toward the black king. Exactly. So that, keep these little ideas in mind. Okay, so black played knight f6, castles. Again, if queen takes a5, or queen takes c5, a4, and bishop to a3. So for example, if black castled, bishop to a3 is already pretty brutal. So, okay. So black castled first, and then white played bishop to e3 and said, okay, I'm keeping my pawn. So what are you going to do? And black was probably thinking, I'll just, round it up. Don't worry. I'll round it up. But even if black does that, white has the two bishops in the open game. It's not like this little sweet thing here is a strong point for black. And white's going to have a pretty big initiative. So I like this move, I like the move bishop to e3, because now that we're castled, we're just holding this pawn. We're just okay, thank you. And I know it's ugly, I know it's nasty, I know it's all done, but here's the thing. Your queen is over here to take one of these pawns. And now it's not taking one of those pawns. So what's your queen doing over here? Moves matter too. So, knight c6, bishop to d4, please take, no problem. Heal my pawn structure, and I remain a pawn up. Alright? Okay. So, bishop to d4, knight to d7, rook to b1. I like this move a lot, because if you take this pawn, you are greeted with the nasty move, rook to b5. And what's amazing about all of this is how well strong players just set up little traps like this that everyone falls for, right? So you go oh, okay, I'm going to play knight to d7, and then the guy plays rook to b1, and you're like, darn it, I'm not going to play knight takes c5, and all I've done is undeveloped my own piece and developed theirs, preventing myself from taking the pawn. And now white has a beautiful possible attacking chances against the poor black king over here. So a6, stopping rook to b5, and knight f4. So knight f4, probing the king side, but also the d-pawn. Knight takes, okay, we have a bishop exchange, and the reason for that bishop exchange is black really needs to play knight f6 and guard this pawn, but if he does that, then this happens. So knight takes d4, pawn takes d4, and knight f6. And now white played a very strong move here, which gets all of the pieces into the game, and it ends beautifully after this. So white played the move, rook b6. And I see you, Kali, asking about queen takes a3. It's not a relevant pawn to the situation, and it only entombs the black queen even further away from what's actually happening, which is on the king side. And now it's too late to go back, because the rook's blocking you to go back. Rook b6 is very nice. It blocks the queen out and threatens rook takes f6, destroying the king side. Exactly, Din Wiesel. Exactly. So bishop to g4, queen c1, queen was under attack. Queen a4. And the brutal but destructive move, rook takes f6. And you just crushing the king side. That was the last defender of the king. Pawn takes, knight takes d5, and it's all over. It's all she wrote, because knight takes f6 is being threatened, queen to h6 is being threatened, and so it's just, you can't do anything here. For example, queen takes d4, guarding the f-pawn and attacking the knight. The simple queen h6 just wins the game, because you also threatening queen takes h7 and also knight takes f6. You can't stop. You can only stop one over the other. You can stop the attack on h7, but then you have to deal with the one on f6. This is a great game because it illustrates some of the basics within the position. Yeah. And it shows you that the weak pawns can also serve as anchors for the pieces into the position. And, yeah. So that's the thing. So here. So yeah, like, I guess what we can do is we can just talk about the main points in the game. So here. Okay, so I talked a little bit about this pawn structure, which happens in the French sometimes, which is that if these pawns, one, white is up a pawn, but most importantly, white has the dark squared bishop, and black does not have a dark squared bishop. So we talked about that. Okay? So here, and yeah, all this was okay. It probably, now white is not allowing him to get the pawn back, and white used his Irish pawns to support his pieces and anchor his pieces into the center. Yep. So, so knight to d7, rook to b1, preventing knight. I mean, I don't really know what to tell you here. I think the biggest thing to walk away from in this game is that this structure, when you've given away your dark squared bishop, you should not focus too much on the pawn structure, but rather this unopposed bishop. And we saw one example of that, like after knight to e2, if queen takes c5, then here. Right? And this shows how that dark squared this shows how that dark squared bishop can get into the game. So I would just say the thing to pick up from this game, other than the great moves like that white played, is just that, these double pawns or triple pawns aren't actually that weak. Yeah. So Delete Trevor says, can you generalize this to giving either bishop, or does it only apply when you're down the knight for the dark square bishop? I think it's very specific, Delete Trevor, to these French positions where black gives away the dark squared bishop for the knight, and the bishop on c1 can reign on those dark squares. So I guess some characteristics are that it's an open position, so the bishop should be preferred, and that because of the way the black played the opening, the French defense, the dark squared weaknesses are greater. Like, for example, in the Nimzo-Indian defense, this happens sometimes, where you wreck the pawn structure and you give away your dark squared bishop, but then one of the strategies here for black is to play the pieces on the dark squares. Play the pawns on the dark squares so that you can use your pawns to cover those weaknesses, because you don't have your dark squared bishop anymore. right? So the different, thank you, Grandmaster Naroditsky for 100 bits. We got a Grandmaster listening. He says, fantastic explanation. Now, you never know. But basically, this is the difference, Trevor, is that here, black can cover those weak squares with his pawns. Whereas in the French defense position that we got from the game, this is one of the reasons that I stopped playing the Winauer and the McCutcheon was this exact pawn structure. And again, in the McCutcheon, it looks like this. So the McCutcheon is this. E4, E6, D4, D5, here, 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 here. So I used to play this for black. Sorry, guys. I used to play this for black. And my opponents, so I would do this here. I was black. And I used to play this line with bishop to d7, bishop to c6, and knight to d7. So here, 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 here. I think it was here. Yeah, like my opponents would always do this. Okay? And then at some point, they would just take here. And because this bishop is so bad and the dark squares are so weak, I was like, okay, that should be good for me. These pawns are all weak, but white has the control over the dark squares. And even here, white doesn't even have the dark squared bishop. It's not even as bad as the game, because white doesn't even have the dark squared bishop. So even this I didn't like. So anyway, yeah, okay, I'm going to show, well, let's see. Oh, wow. It's 7:40. I can't believe it. We're already up. I mean, the next game I had for you is so brutal. That's the thing. Well, but you guys know, I owe you my hour, 6:30 to 7:30. You guys know that. That's my promise to you. Every Tuesday, every Thursday, and occasionally on the weekends, I owe it to you, to come on and do my time. But beyond that time, then we're starting to get into personal time and stuff. So your support, and then we watch it. So Innovative Panda, thank you so much for 1,000 bits. Who, by the way, the Innovative Panda also contributed 15 subs to get us right over 200 again. So thank you, Innovative Panda. But I'd like to see a little more community support if you are enjoying these lectures, to push them to keep going on. Now, I'll also thank you, Aniket, for 150 bits. Greatly appreciate it. I will tell you that we are starting, well, we have a YouTube channel, but it's not active. We are going to start posting on YouTube. I know people have been asking for this for a while. We will not post the whole lectures on YouTube, but we'll try to post some fragments. We'll edit them, and we'll try to post some of the best parts of the videos on YouTube so people can go back and watch them for years to come. Okay, so we're going to be doing that. We're going to, keep an eye out for that. We'll start sharing the link once we get our first videos produced and we put them out there. But if you do like these, you'll be able to share them with your friends and people who are also chess improvers and chess enthusiasts. And sharing helps us because it helps more people identify us and find us. So even that, yeah. So hey, Chess Chimp 1234. He says, Chess Chimp says, I'm 43, so Twitch isn't my thing. I'm a sub. How do I make a donation? Chess Chimp, thank you. So your donations are not required, of course, but it motivates us to keep going. So Bowser Cobalt, thank you for a sub. You can make a donation by purchasing bits, which is Twitch currency, or you can just make a direct donation if you go to our Twitch homepage. Like I think it's twitch.tv/Charlotte Chess Center. There is a donate button, and you can use that to contribute. So greatly appreciate it, and I will go ahead and thanks to the the future donation of Chess Chimp, Innovative Panda, and Anneke and Daniel. We are going to, I'm going to show you the next game that I had for you. So thank you, Delete Trevor, for posting that donate link in the chat. Really appreciate it. Let's look at this master class right here. This is just brilliant, all right? So let me get a drink here. So this is just such a brilliant game, and there's definitely something to be taken away from this. So Roy Lopez opening, and you know, the Roy Lopez bishop to b5, I can say that whenever I first started playing chess, I didn't like the Roy Lopez because I didn't know how to play the closed game. I always preferred the Scotch game. I preferred the Italian game, Evans Gambit style. I always, within the first 10 moves, I wanted the open game. I wanted pieces to be flying everywhere. I wanted to have targets. I wanted to have a king to go after. I wanted specifics. But later, when I started playing more strategically in my games, it's evident to me that the Roy Lopez is the best way to play against e4, e5. Now, at the very, very, very highest levels, there's the move knight f6, the Berlin defense, which was championed by world champion, then challenger for the world championship, Vladimir Kramnik, who beat Kasparov, where Kasparov was not able to win a single game against this in their match. Okay, Chess Chimp, thank you so much for staying true to your word there and donating $10. It did come through, so greatly appreciate it, Chess Chimp, and thank you for supporting the channel. So a6, it is noted. It is a something that you should put in your memory bank, that if bishop takes knight and white's trying to go after this pawn, capturing with your d pawn is the best thing to do. So if you play this position as black, capturing with your d pawn, and if white tries to grab this pawn on e5, there is a strong move here which you should remember, which is the move queen to d4, because this happens a lot in the double king pawn games. And okay, so you're basically attacking these 2 points and you're going to win one back. Okay? So pawn to a6, bishop drops back, and we get a relatively standard position. You know, white playing the conservative move d3 here. And this, I would say, is, okay, maybe not bishop to g4, but this is like a starting position of most Roy Lopez positions. It's very similar to the Italian game, except here black has already committed their queen side. This is considered to be an advantage for white, because in this case, with this pawn poking out on the queen side, white can use the move a4 to open up a file for himself, creating that positive pawn tension on the a file and preparing to open a file for himself, where black doesn't have that luxury. In the Italian game, black's bishop is usually on c5, and this pawn is back on b7. And that's, in my opinion, that's got to be a plus for black, right? Because white doesn't have any targets there, and the bishop is more actively placed on this diagonal than it is on e7. So the Roy Lopez is more of a challenge, in my opinion, to the black position than the Italian game, which is very popular right now at the top level. Bishop to g4 is the first mistake. It's a first step in the wrong direction. And you're thinking to yourself, are you crazy? How could that be a mistake? Well, positionally speaking, it's the wrong place to put the bishop. And you're like, I don't see what you're talking about, man. That looks like a great place to put the bishop. The bishop on g4 pins the knight, okay? And, well, here's the thing. So here's the thing, guys. The bishop on g4 is normally good in positions like this except in the Roy Lopez and the slow Italian game. Because with white's pawn on c3, black has no way to further the pressure against this knight. As a consequence, in the Roy Lopez and in the Italian games, one of the common maneuvers with the knight on b1 is the maneuver knight to d2, knight f1, you move the rook, right? And knight to g3. So when that maneuver happens, you don't want this bishop to be on the king side because you get tempo on it. And that's exactly what happened in the game. This could not be a better illustration for why not to put your bishop on this diagonal in the Roy Lopez and Italian game. Like, there could not have been a better game than this one. So, oh, sorry, guys. One arrow key and it messes up. Okay, so h3 was played. And bishop to h5. Right? Okay, he chooses the wrong diagonal. He had one more chance to go back to its proper diagonal, but he chose to keep the pin here, which he can't further the pressure on. So watch what happens. Rook to e1, preparing the hole for the knight maneuver. Knight a5, we usually like to keep that bishop, so we tuck it away. It looks passive here, but look at that knight. Yeah, I mean, are you writing home about the knight? So, c5, knight to d2, here comes the tour. And now here, white played the move g4, and then we'll follow up with the move knight to g3. And again, this bishop biting on granite should be either on b7 or d7, not on g6. This bishop is only a target point for the white attack. The f5 square is very strong. The bishop can be attacked by the pawns. The bishop on this diagonal biting on granite is not the most active place and does not influence the center. If the bishop is on b7 and black plays the move d5, that could cause a lot of pressure to white's center. This maneuver does not help. This bishop's on the wrong diagonal, and it only this knight maneuver only helped black. Okay, or only help white. Rook f to d8, queen to e2, knight back to e8 because he realizes maybe he's going to have to clear a way for his bishop to come back. King h2. I like this. White is preparing to go all in for the king side attack, and he is prepared for that g file to open. Pawn f6, rook g1. Now listen, the center is stable, so he has every right to attack on the flank. c4, d4. I like this move. And after pawn takes and knight takes, now all of white's pieces spring into the game, and that beautiful f5 square, is just for pickings right there. So f7, knight on d to f5. The forces are coming in strong. The bishop is poised at the king side, and you're thinking to yourself, what do you mean? How is that? Do not be surprised if we see this pawn roll up to allow that bishop free. Okay? Bishop f8, rook to d1. Black played d5. Yup, exactly, Kali, d5. But that opens up this bishop. So, a brilliant... this is why I wanted to show you this game. A brilliant combination of moves was played here by white, which I think he actually saw on the previous move, which is why he played rook to d1. This is so nice. This is so nice. Like, the whole thing, if you see it from start to finish, I remember, like, this is what was happening. I was researching games for Alexander Ilyin Zhenevsky, the player of the hour and a half, and I was looking at some games, and I was pressing the arrow key. And then when this move happened, I was like, okay. Then the next move happened, I was like, whoa. And then the next two moves, I was like, oh. I gotta need my heart. I can't take it anymore. Oh, it was such a nice sequence of moves. I could not stand it. I was like, oh my gosh, like somebody called a doctor. I was thinking to myself, because it was the whole combination is just so beautiful here. So let's see what you have. Lol. So indeed, rook takes d5 is the correct first move. That lures the rook up, and that weakens the control of the e6 square. But I was like, so what? Like, queen to e6, and then queen f7 secures the rook. Right? So he goes queen e6, and then queen f7 happened. And then the brutal combination of moves happens. Knight h6, check. Absolutely gorgeous move. You can't deny this. You cannot deny this. So you take. Then bishop takes h7. Oh my god. So, give me an inhaler. Right? You can't take with the queen because of the pin. If you take with the king, you lose your queen and you lose your rook. So he played king g7, and then bishop takes h6. I was like, I can't, I've never, no, don't. I mean, this was just brilliant. The whole, the strategic play was great, but this tactical combination was unbelievable. Yeah, just brutal, because every bishop that was given away there isn't free. You're basically just trying to bring this king away from the defense of the queen. But it was he definitely saw it, Zhu. Number 3. Yeah, he definitely saw it. Joe. Hey, goodbye clock. You can certainly do that. You can certainly do that in your own games. It's just a calculated thing, right? So it began with rook takes d5, and then which eliminated the control of this square, and then actually all the moves are forced. Queen e6 is a fork. If black just moves the king away, you take the rook and you're up a piece. So you can foresee that black is going to play queen f7. Now this is the hard part. Knight h6 check. So you sacrifice the knight for a fork. They've got to take that because they're in a fork. Then you play bishop takes h7. Boom. Right? You take my bishop, I take your queen, and I come back and take your rook. I'm just winning everything. So you step up and you keep and guard your queen. And then the guy plays bishop takes h6. You can't catch a break around here. And, okay, after this move, resign is played, because I am threatening the rook and checkmate and the bishop. And rook, if something like rook to g5, then knight f5 check, and I deflect this rook away. It's the only move, and then checkmate. Just absolutely brutal. Another great game which shows that tactics occur in positions of strategic strength, right? So first, white built up quite the nice position. In fact, in this position, my computer says, I'm turning on the computer here. You can hear my fan running probably. My computer says 2.5 here for white already. And white's not even up anything. It's just that's how great white's position is. And then after this, it's just plus 8 million. Because all of these brutal tactics are forced and good. All this is correct. Plus 12 now, plus 1 million, and then checkmate. Yeah. So, just really strong play by Ilyin Zhenevsky there. From a strategic standpoint, getting his pieces into the right situation, and then, being able to act properly when given the opportunity. So, yeah. Great game. Great game. And so, just to give everyone a reminder, Tuesday is the Learn from the Legends lecture. And today was about Ilyin Zhenevsky, who is Alexander Ilyin Zhenevsky, who was a very strong chess player, Soviet chess player in the early and mid-1900s. Died actually due to a Nazi airstrike in, I don't know, Stalingrad or Leningrad. Where was it again? Let me see. In Leningrad, right. It's the Siege of Leningrad. And was a great player, but unfortunately died at 41. And he has an opening named after him, which many people refer to as the classical Dutch. But I always knew it as the Ilyin Zhenevsky variation, which is in the Dutch defense. It's the setup where black chooses to place the pawns on d6 and e6. So d5 would be the stone wall. g6 with the bishop on g7 would be the Leningrad variation. But this variation, more recently championed by like Simon Williams and some other guys, is called the... Oh, my bad, guys. I forgot to switch back to the chessboard. So in the Dutch defense... Here, if black plays d5, that's the stone wall. So you create that wall of pawns. d6, known as the classical Dutch, championed by Simon Williams and other people, this was always known as the Ilyin Zhenevsky variation. And he has many games like this. And the idea is to keep these pawns flexible and try to play the move e5. So you bring your queen over to e8, just show you some moves, and basically you try to play for the move pawn to d4, or pawn to e5 rather. So, yeah, so that variation of the Dutch was named after him, and he has plenty of games in it, so rightfully so. He was the first one to champion. This was actually one of his games, and black already has a good game here. So, Ilyin Zhenevsky variation of the Dutch. I don't know if he has any other openings named after him. Probably not. But, But yeah. All right, guys. So, Innovative Panda says, how good is the Dutch defense against the London system? It's okay. It's good. It's okay. Nothing wrong. I mean, I think theoretically there's no major problem with the Dutch defense, but I think most strong players go for the Leningrad Dutch. So it would be here and g6, bishop g7, like this. Guys like Gadakamsky and players, even Nakamura, they preferred the Leningrad Dutch. Bishop, yes, my parents are Greek. I grew up in the United States, but both of my parents are from Greece. Thank you. You can type to me in Greek if you want, if you prefer. I can read and interpret, but whatever is best, whatever you prefer. You guys are welcome. Any questions before we go? Any questions before we go? And I appreciate those contributors, Chess Chimp, Daniel Naroditsky, Aniket Sakar, Innovative Panda, of course, all of the subs that we got today, individual subs and those gifted subs as well. A wow for 100 bits, and I really appreciate you guys. and just like these things, whether it's on our channel, and Alan Hancock, who contributed a huge donation last week, so Alan 1946 as well, thank you so much. So I would just remind anyone who listens to any stream, I'm not only selling my stream. All I'm asking for is that when you guys go out and watch a stream that you really enjoy, if you have the means to support that, do it, because you never know. The smaller streams who are still working their way up, they need all the support they can get to continue to grow, right? So, just keep that in mind. If you have the means to support them, do it, because no one's really, smaller streamers and stuff, no one's getting rich off of this. But sometimes we need a little bit of more motivation to keep it going. So, if you enjoy it and you find it awesome to watch from home or to watch from work, and you find it a part of your day, a positive part of your day, just do it. Whatever stream it is, our stream, other streams, just do it. So, goodbye, Clock. Thank you for 500 bits. Xanth, always contributing as well. Thank you so much for 500 bits. Greatly appreciate it. And Khalid. Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome, Bishop Vag. You're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed the stream. So Khalid had a question. He says, the bishop on the right, it matters in the end, because so Khalid's question was, early on when we were talking about the misplacement of the light squared bishop in the previous game, right? The bishop being over here. He says, that bishop being on the wrong square, did it matter in the end? Yes, because when you look at a chess game, you don't look at just the end to see what happened, right? You have to look at what caused the position to crumble in its entirety and everything that happened before that. And this bishop being on the wrong diagonal allowed white to get several moves of development in tempo, and it cost black several moves of undevelopment and lack of coordination to get the bishop back into a positive place. So yes, in the final position, I don't know, right? But it cost black time. It cost black coordination, So yes, it did affect it. And if black didn't have to spend all the time rearranging and losing tempos with that bishop, he could have done. Think about it this way, Khalid. That's 1, 2, 3, and then, I count these as tempos saving the bishop as well, because they were needed. You had to move these as well. So maybe 8 to 10 tempi, 8 to 10 tempi solving that bishop problem. And in the meantime, white was ready to pounce, and white pounced. I mean, I don't mind replaying this one again. Check, boom, boom. Oh gosh, so we have to see, this is the Picasso right here. That's what I want to be on the end of the stream. That's the key. So yeah, the end position was brutal. But remember, Khalid, chess, you have to think about it as the whole game from start to finish. You got to think about it as one beautiful picture, that you're painting from start to finish, and with some smudges along the way, So everything you do in a chess game is related to the next thing that happens. So yeah. Hi, I'm Peter Giannatos, founder of the Charlotte Chess Center. If you enjoyed these videos, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you'd like to watch these videos live, be sure to follow us on Twitch.